Hello viewers, good morning. I am Professor V.V. Subramaniam, Director, School of Computer Information Sciences, IGNOU, New Delhi. Today we will see a session on memory management in operating system. In the earlier session, we had talked about the process management in operating system and inter-process communication and synchronization. So in that, the tagline being the higher CPU utilization and the higher throughput of the processes. So in this particular session, we will talk about the memory management in operating system. Memory, which is very expensive, and then we have to utilize it very properly. So even the system is of higher configuration, if the RAM size is very small, then it may affect the effectiveness of the whole system. So let us see and concentrate on how the operating system will manage the whole memory. Coming to the slides, please. So memory is essential to the operation of a modern computer system. So whenever we talk about the memory part, we see the interaction will be happening with the interaction is achieved through a sequence of reads and writes. So memory reading, memory writing. So memory reading is nothing but it will be fetching some certain data or instructions and by the CPU, and then memory writing means something will be written onto the RAM, onto the processes. So that too at a particular memory address. So memory is a large array of words, each of which having a particular location, or else you can call that one as the address of the memory. So the CPU fetches the program from the hard disk. As we know, whenever we talk about the application first of all should reside in the RAM, then only it will execute, or else you can work with that particular application. Either it may be a commercial application, or else the app that we talk about in the mobiles. So first of all, it should reside in the RAM, then only you can execute that particular application or app. If a program is to be executed, as we see, it must be mapped to absolute addresses and loaded into the memory. Then only this particular application will work. So in a multi-programming, suppose if you take the case of a multi-programming environment, several processes reside inside the RAM. So not one particular process will reside, but in order to give the CPU, in order to have a algorithm, one after the other, the processes will get the CPU, executes and gives the output. So there are many algorithms we can see depending on a particular situation to manage the complete memory. So how these particular processes comes into, resides in the memory, executes, everything depends upon the algorithm that is running behind. So selection of memory management scheme for a specific system depends upon many factors, especially the hardware design part of the system. So each algorithm, when you see, not only the software support it should have, however the program or the software support it should always must have the hardware support also. So until and unless the hardware cooperates with the processes that are residing in the memory, the whole memory management may not be that much efficient. So apart from the algorithms that run behind, the hardware also will participate in managing the memory. So let us see the responsibilities of the operating system. It should keep track of which locations of memory are currently being referred to. Suppose if there are 4 processes, namely P1, P2, P3, P4 are residing, and right now CPU is trying to execute process 1, so it should have, or else it should keep track of the lower boundary and the upper boundary as well as the current location of process P1. Suppose if there is a certain context switch from P1 to P2, once again it should keep track of the process 2 locations of memory and then it should execute, and once again whenever the P1 is being shifted, the focus has been shifted from P1 to P2, the PCB process control block that we were talking in the earlier sessions, that is the data structure which contains the complete status of the process when it is going out from the focus of the CPU. So that particular thing that it will store, and once again using the context switch the P2 will get, and then the P2, if at all it is been earlierly loaded, then the earlier status of the PCB will be loaded, then it executes along with the P2. So it should also decide which processes are loaded into the memory and which locations are to be marked, earmarked to that process. That also should be taken care. And then the memory spaces. Suppose if there is in the lower portion of the memory, the operating system always resides. So there will be the upper space empty for the processes part. So it should deallocate the memory space as needed. So these are the main functions of the operating system with respect to the memory management. Apart from these three operations in the multi-programming environment, operating system dynamically allocates the memory to multiple processes, not a single process, but a multiple processes will be residing in the RAM, and then those must be executed in a particular order depending upon the algorithm. Thus, memory plays a significant role in the important aspects of computer system like performance, software support, reliability and stability. Once the processes execution is over, it should swap off that particular process to the hard disk, and once again whatever the process that is waiting for the memory allocation, that should be taken care with the help of the particular algorithm. So we have to see two aspects. One is the overlays aspect and other is the swapping aspect. What are these aspects? Why we have to see? In an idealistic situation, we can guess that the whole program along with the data, everything is residing in the main memory, and then the CPU is allocated to it and the execution process starts. This is an idealistic situation. Suppose, think a case wherein which the RAM size is small and the process size is big. So how to tackle that particular situation? For these situations, there is a scheme called, or else there is a technique called as overlays technique. So this particular thing, that is the RAM space is small and the program is large enough and it doesn't fit into exactly into the main memory. The complete program along with the data set, suppose if it is unable to fit into the main memory that is provided by the memory. So this particular thing can be achieved using a overlays technique. Like dynamic loading, overlays can also be implemented by users without the operating system support. So these particular overlays you can write with the help of the programming language embedded inside the program. So maybe that is also possible, but the possibility with the OS is this overlays technique. So the entire program or application is divided into instructions and data sets, and then all the instructions may not be fitting into the memory, that is the space is much small when we compared with the memory allocation that is assigned to the particular process. As and when requirement, only those parts of instructions will be loaded into the main memory, execute, and then after they are no longer needed, then those will be thrown out and another set of instructions will be kept into the memory and executes. So there may be some parts wherein which their presence must be always in the RAM. So those particular instructions or statements which are essential to be residing in the RAM, those will be residing, and other parts of the instructions they will be coming and executing, and whenever there is no longer needed, those will be swapped off and other instruction set will be swapped in. So this kind of technique is called as a overlaying. Within the same space, we are overlaying with many instructions. A set of instructions after execution, if they are no longer needed, those will be taken away, and then another set of instructions will be brought into the memory and then working with that particular thing. So here you had seen two categories of statements. Those are, one is the fixed category, where in which always their presence must be in the RAM. So they are fixed. So some parts of the instructions are there where in which they can be brought into and all or else swapped out. So those particular things are there. So the definition you can see on the slide, an overlay, and the other part, those are the set of overlays. You can call them as the set of instructions in the form of overlays or else in the form of groups, where in which those can be brought into or else been thrown out of the memory after their execution is over. So you have to take care two aspects. One is the overlays aspect and the permanent thing is the root piece aspect. So you can see here a simple example. So I had shown two situations over here. One is without the overlay and the other is with overlay. Without the overlay, you can see the process along with the data set and other things, it is occupying around 180K. So you can see 20 for read, then 50, 70 and then 40K. So these particular things are been residing on the memory, and then one is the read part that is occupying 20K, then 50K function 1, 70K function 2 and then 40K display. So here you can see the read and the display, those are called as the root pieces. They should always stay in the main memory. So other 120K, that is function 1 and function 2, those can be made as the overlay. That is overlay 1 for function 1 and overlay B for the function 2. Overlay A, that is function 1 is having is assigned something like it requires 50K and the B requires 70K. So in the right side you can find with overlay situation where in which it is occupying only 130K. Why? Because 20K for the read, that is the root piece, and display piece, that is 40K. So those will always be there in the RAM, that is 60K is occupied, and then among overlay A, B, that is 50, 70, 70 is greater, so 70K is being assigned as the buffer, wherein which they are the function 1 or function 2 are made as overlays, so that at any point of time, depending upon the constraint or depending upon the condition, only one function will be loaded. So condition 1, function 1 may be loaded, for condition 2, function 2 may be loaded. So for that reason 70K, that is among 50K and 70K, B is greater, that is 70K. So 70K is being reserved, and within 130K the whole program is being executed when compared to 180K in an idealistic situation. So this is how the overlays concept will help in managing the memory. So let us see the limitations also. Whenever we talk about such kind of situations, some sort of overheads also will be included. So it requires a careful and time consuming planning. Why? Because we have to write the program also in such a way that the condition should match along with the overlays. Like suppose condition 1 may be fetching function 1 or else condition 2 may be fetching function 2. And there may be some cases where in which overlays may not be possible also. So in many instances while doing the programming part, if at all there are certain conditions assigned with calling of some functions, then this kind of overlays may be possible. So programmer is responsible for writing such kind of overlays concepts inside the programming using some structures or piece of code. So operating system, here the role of the operating system provides the facility to load the files, or else to load those particular overlays into the overlay region. So overlay region, you had seen among the 50K of overlay A and 70K of overlay B, the greater part like the 70K is being reserved as the overlay region, or else you can call that one as the buffer region in order to make residing the overlays. So there is another concept called as swapping concept. So there is a slight difference between the overlays and the swapping concept. So swapping is an approach from memory management by bringing each process in entirety. That is the underlying word, entirety. So whenever we talk about the entirety of the program, we have to have all the set of instructions including the data set also. So swapping is a technique that lets you use a disk file as an extension of the memory. So it normally whenever you throw back means that means it only throws away to the disk file. So there in the overlays we are seeing some set of instructions that to divided into two categories. One is the root piece and the other is the overlays part. But in the swapping there is no such distribution. The whole entirety of the program should be existing in the RAM, executed, and then whenever there is a kind of context, it will be brought back to the disk file. So disk file is the extension of the memory used over here. So lower priority processes, whenever they are inside the RAM waiting for IO or something else, then they will be swapped out from the main RAM to the disk space, that is the extension of the main memory. So here the disk space, some part of the disk space is used as the extension of the main memory. So whenever the process which is just like assigned with the CPU, the term is the allocation is over, or else the time is over, or else there is a kind of simple context switch because of some IO requirement or some sort of interrupt to be solved. So that particular lower priority process will be swapped out to the disk, and then the next higher priority process or else the process which is in the queue will be brought into the RAM, and the CPU will be allocated and the execution of that process B will be started. So bringing in is called as the roll-in swapping, and throwing out from the RAM to the disk space is called as the rollout swapping. So though performance is usually affected by swapping process, because half part of the program is over and it is waiting for the IO to happen. So it is being once again brought back to the disk file, waited for some time to get the IO and other kind of requirements, and then once the IO and other things are fulfilled, then it is once again bringing into the main RAM. So there is a kind of delay, or else it may affect performance, however, but the CPU will be always busy. So once the rolled out is happened, then the rolling of another process waiting in the queue will be brought into and is being executed. So here you have to see two things, one is the roll-in and one is the rollout swapping. So it helps in running multiple and big processes in parallel, as we had seen, and that is the reason swapping is also known as a technique of memory compaction. The swapping is also called as memory compaction. Within the same memory space, we are able to run many processes, that too by using the extension of the disk space as the for the swapping processes. So swapping in and swapping out are being happening using that but small disk space, which is called as the memory of the extension of the memory. So you can see here process 1, process 2, process 3, likewise there are several processes waiting over here in the main memory. So here once the process 2, you can see here process 2 is being process P1 is residing, process P1 and P2 are waiting, and then process P1 is residing, and there is a kind of IO request, then it is been swapped out and put it onto the disk file, that is the secondary memory, and then there P2 is there and P3 is there, and that P3 is waiting in the queue, and P3 is being brought into the main memory when P1 was swapped out. So the same space, P1 space, whenever it is been swapped out, it was empty and P3 is brought into. When this particular thing is happening, the complete status of P1 is noted into the PCB of P1. Process control broke up, the complete status of P1 will be noted onto the PCB of P1. And then it the thing, like IO, if it is an IO request or else any kind of interrupt, that will be happening, and once again the P1 will be waiting in the queue, and then whenever there are no more processes in the RAM and P3 is asking for any IO or interrupt, then it is being swapped out onto the secondary memory and P1 is brought into the main memory. So in this way the swapping happens. So when this swapping is happening, we have to consider the time also. That time is called as the swapping time. So only swapping is taken into consideration or swap out also to be consideration. So let us see the definition. The total time taken by swapping process includes the time it takes to move the entire process to a secondary disk and then to copy the process into the memory, as well as the time the process takes to regain main memory. So this particular time period, the total time, we can call it as the swapping time. So here you can see a simple mathematical calculation. Let us assume that the user process is of size 204, that is 2 MB, and on a standard hard disk where swapping will take place has a data transfer around 1 MB per second. So the actual transfer of the 1000K process to and on from the memory. You can see over here the process, the user process divided by the time period, that is 1 MB per second, 1 Mbps. So it takes obviously 2 seconds because it is having 2 MB, so it takes 2 seconds, or you can call it that one as the 2000 milliseconds. In this way you can calculate the time. Then what is the benefits? It allows higher degree of multiprogramming because whenever one process is waiting, the CPU will go waste. So instead of going waste, what it is doing? It is once again swapping in the process which is waiting for or else ready in the queue. So it is been swapped into the main memory and CPU is assigned. So here you can see the CPU is completely busy with the processes, handling the processes. So the higher degree of multiprogramming is being achieved. So it allows dynamic reallocation if there is no kind of address binding. Wherever the space is there that particular program is being swapped into and the other program is being swapped out. And then better memory utilization, less wastage of CPU time on compaction, and can easily be applied on priority based scheduling algorithms to improve the performance. Why? Because the lower priority, whenever they are residing in the like main memory, those are being swapped out, and the higher priority programs are being brought into, they will be executed very fast, and then they will be like sent out, and then once again the another higher priority process will be brought into. In this way the higher priority based scheduling algorithms will be coming into, and the process of the whole system will be improved. So there are certain limitations also. Entire program must be resided, because I had used the entirety word, I had underlined the word entirety. So entire program along with the data set, that is the expectation. It's like entire program must be resident in store when it is executing. Also processes with changing memory requirements will need to issue system calls for requesting and releasing the memory. So it is necessary to know exactly how much memory. You should have a kind of anticipation that this particular process should be given certain space, that too a kind of estimation should be there, wherein which this process will occupy in entirety like 1000K or 2000K of memory locations. So there should be a kind of anticipation whenever we talk about the swapping technique. So when after going through this particular swapping and the overlays concept, let us concentrate on the addressing schemes. Why? Because whenever we talk in the programming language, we talk the addresses with a separate word. Whenever they are inside the memory, then the addresses we call it with a different name. What are the names? Those are being given for the same addresses when it is written inside the program or when it is residing in the RAM. So the operating system takes care of mapping the logical addresses into physical addresses at the time of memory allocation of the program. There are three types of addresses we have to talk about. So one is the symbolic addresses, other is the relative addresses, third is the physical addresses. Suppose in the symbolic addresses, suppose some labels are being given inside the program, go to so and so label. So those particular addresses will be stored as the symbolic addresses. The addresses used in the source code. So whenever we write the programming, we may refer to certain labels. So those particular labels, we call them as suppose even the labels also will be residing, whenever we talk about that particular labels, obviously it resides in the main memory, that too with a certain location. But whenever we write it inside the program, we call it as a label or else a symbolic address. Go to so and so label, label 1, or go to, whenever this particular condition is met, go to label 2. Likewise, these particular variable names, constants and instruction labels are the basic elements of the symbolic addresses space. So the another part we can consider the relative addresses. What are relative addresses? At the time of compilation, a compiler converts these particular symbolic addresses that we are talking about, the label 1, label 2 and other labels, into a kind of relative addresses. So then comes the third part, that is the physical addresses. The loader generates these addresses at the time when a program is loaded into the main memory. So the physical addresses is actual addresses, those are being assigned in the main memory. So certain program is there, so it starts from so and so location, it ends with the so and so locations, and there may be several instructions that needs to be executed, and each type of instruction or each instruction will be assigned some sort of memory location, and even not only the program instructions but also the data set. So data set also will be having certain addresses in order to fetch by the program from that particular data set, and once again those should be assigned some sort of set of addresses. So memory, the instructions will be one set, and then the data also, it will be having a different set of addresses. So here you have to see three kinds of addresses. One is the symbolic addresses that we use inside the programming, and the relative addresses where at the time of compilation we use this particular relative addresses, and some part is being converted into object code, and some object code also will be linked into the programming whenever it loads into the main memory. Some parts it will convert at the time of compilation or at the time of interpretation, and some parts are being linked after the object code is being generated. The whole object code will be loaded into the main memory. As we see in the C programming, the main program, suppose if you write a simple program, some functions will be there, and we will be including the header files also. So those object codes are apart. So whenever we do the compilation, only the main program will be compiled, and then the linking will be done, and then the complete pack will be executed in order to give the output of the program. So here we had seen symbolic addresses, then the relative addresses, and the actual physical addresses. Those are being given onto the main memory. The set of all logical addresses generated by a program is referred to as a logical address. The set of all physical addresses, that is the physical memory location addresses corresponding to these logical addresses, those are being given as a part of the program, is referred to as physical address space. So whenever there is a kind of mapping kind of thing, that is logical addresses to the physical addresses, once again there is a conversion taking place. So the runtime mapping from virtual space to the physical address space is done by a unit or else by a hardware part that is called as the memory management unit, that is MMU. So the main job of this particular MMU is to convert the logical addresses to the physical addresses. Logical addresses that contains, you can see, that contains the symbolic as well as the relative part, which are being converted into the physical addresses that we are talking about. So MMU uses following mechanism to convert the virtual address to a physical address. So there will be a kind of base register, that is the lower limit. The value in the base register is added to every address. So suppose if the lower limit is 1000, then the first instruction will be 1000 plus 1001. And then the next instruction plus 2, plus 3. Likewise, if the program instruction, the complete program instructions are having 130, then the count will start from 1000 to 130, 1001 to 130. So for example, if the base register value is like 10,000 over here, then an attempt by the user to use address location 100 will be nothing but 10,000 plus 100, that is 10,100. So in this way, the base register is being added to the address and actual physical address can be known. So the user program deals with the virtual addresses, it never sees the physical addresses as such. So then after looking into this particular MMU unit or the conversion of virtual addresses into the physical addresses, let us see the linking part. In the linking part, you have the static linking and the dynamic linking. The static linking is used, the linker combines all other modules needed by a programmer into a single executable program to avoid any runtime dependency. So this is not happening at the runtime. This particular thing, the compilation of each and everything, the linking of each and every module is happening first and then only is being loaded into the main memory. So in the static linking, the linker combines all other modules, whatever those are necessary for that particular program, the actual program and the other linkages, whatever that are to be linked to that particular program are being treated as one unit, and then those particular things are being as a one unit, it will be loaded into the main memory. Otherwise, in the dynamic linking, it is the other way around. So when dynamic linking is used, it is not required to link the actual module or library within the program. Rather, a reference to the dynamic module is provided at the time of compilation and linking. So at the time of compilation and linking, only references will be taken care. So once it is being loaded, then those particular dynamically linking libraries will be happening. Like you will be seeing the .dll files also. So dynamic link libraries in Windows and shared objects in Unix are good examples of the dynamic linking libraries. So this particular whole thing is not considered as a unit. Only the whole program will be there, whatever that will be converted, and some sort of references of the dynamic modules are referred at the time of compilation or linking, and then at the time of loading, those will be loaded. So static and dynamic loading. After the linking, we can see the loading part. So the program is ready for loading into the main memory. So if you have a good load your program statically, then at that time of compilation, the complete programs will be compiled and linked without leaving any external program or module dependency. That we had already seen in the static linking also. So as an entity, the complete linked or else the complete ready program will be loaded into the main memory for execution. The linker combines the object program with other necessary modules into an absolute program, which includes the logical addresses here. So static versus the dynamic loading. So at the time of loading, with static loading, the absolute program is loaded into main memory in order for execution to start. This is a complete entity. If you are using the dynamic kind of loading, the dynamic routines, those are the .dll, the references that are being made while at the time of compilation and the linking, those particular things are relocatable from the main memory and load into the memory only when they are needed by the program. So the references, wherever, suppose if there are three dynamic references, are being made into the program, then those should be fetched from the memory, and then those should be loaded into the main memory at the time of execution. So beforehand is the static, and whenever there is a kind of references part, those are being loaded, that is comes under the dynamic loading. So memory allocation, how the memory allocation takes place, as I told you earlier, the lower part, the RAM stack, the lower part of the RAM stack, the OS is being loaded. The main memory usually has two partitions, one is the lower part, lower memory part, and the higher memory part. So always the operating system, which is the permanent resident, that always will be occupying the lower memory part, and the higher memory part are being given for the processes. Once again, there will be certain kind of boundaries. Once the lower part, for the free space, in order to use the certain for the space for the external commands and other kinds of things, and some buffer is being left away, and the higher part of the memory stack is being assigned for the processes. Suppose if it is a single process system, then the whole thing will be occupying by one processes. Suppose if it is being used for the multi-processing or else multi-programming, then several processes will be residing in the main memory at the same time. But the CPU will be allocated as per the background algorithm that is running behind. So we can talk about single partition allocation, multiple partition allocation. So these kinds of things are possible whenever we talk about the leftover part, that is the leftover higher part of the main memory, because the lower part is occupied by the operating system. When we talk about the upper part, it may be treated as one partition or it may be treated as several partitions, that is multiple partition. So let us take case of one by one, that is the single partition allocation. In this type of allocation, relocation register scheme is used to protect the user processes from each other and from changing operating system code and data. So this particular reallocation register contains the value of the lower one and the lower register that contains the range of logical addresses. So each logical address must be less than the limit of the limit register. So in this way it will see, and then it will put a kind of lower limit as well as the upper limit, and then within those particular limits the whole program will be residing. In the multiple partition, in this kind of partition allocation, main memory is being divided into certain partitions, like they may be uniform or else they may be variable also, or else we can call it as the fixed or else variable partitions inside this multiple partition. What are fixed and variable sizes? Suppose if the leftover memory, the complete leftover memory apart from the operating system's resident, like that particular memory, if it is been distributed equally, like 100K, 100K, 100K in the part of 100Ks, so then that is called as a fixed kind of partitions. And then suppose if there is a variable like 50K, then 100K, and there is some space of 1000K, there is some space of 500K, depending upon the process size, so those may be located in those particular best fit and worst fit by using those particular algorithms into the main memory, then that particular concept comes under the multiple partition allocation. So when a partition is free, a process is selected from the input queue and is loaded. That too, in the fixed size, the size matters. But in the variable size, whenever the size, the more size, like nearest size, if it is available, then that particular program will be, that particular process will be loaded into the main memory. So here you can see the types of memory location, starting with the continuous allocation. Memory location is divided into continuous allocation, non-continuous allocation, and once again within the continuous allocation, it may be a kind of the complete partition, we can call it as the single partition, we can take it as a single partition system, or else the complete leftover partition can be once again divided into multiple partitions, and within multiple partitions there are fixed size as we had seen earlier and variable sized partitions, and within fixed size partitions there are some equal sized, some non-equal sized. So this is the complete hierarchy of the memory allocation. It starts with continuous. Suppose if the pointers concept is there, another like a chaining kind of the thing is there, it comes under non-continuous, and then single partition, multiple, and within the multiple there are fixed, variable, and once again within the fixed there are equisized and variable sized. And whenever we talk about these kinds of memory allocations, there may be a wastage of space. Suppose if the process size is 50K and the 100K space is available, or else 200K space is available like at the particular point of time. So obviously in the ready queue only 50K is available and it will be allotted the 100K space, wherein which the memory is wasting. Those kinds of wastages we call them as the fragments. So as processes are loaded and removed from memory, the free space is broken into little pieces. So once again, suppose if in the ready queue 200K process is waiting and is been loaded into 500K main memory partition. So once again there is a wastage. So those kinds of simple wastages or else pieces of memory which are not been assigned are called as the fragments. So it happens, this particular problem is called as the fragmentation problem, and within the fragmentation there are two kinds of fragmentations available. One is the external fragmentation and the other is the internal fragmentation. External fragmentation is nothing but there are several processes residing in the main memory that do not exactly fit to the size. However, certain blank spaces or else certain fragments are there, or else leftover pieces are there, and another process of 300K is waiting. Suppose if you calculate the fragments, the size is 400K and the waiting process is 300K. However, the space is not it is showing the full memory full condition. Why? Because the space which is been broken down, it is available in pieces and not in the continuous. So that 300K whatever I am talking about is not in the continuous way. So it is broken down into the pieces and this particular piecemeal is available. However, when you calculate in totality, that is exceeding this waiting process. So that kind of fragmentation is called as the external fragmentation. So the total memory space is enough to satisfy the waiting request. However, those are available in the non-continuous way. So this kind of fragmentation is called as the external fragmentation. Then coming to the internal fragmentation is nothing but suppose if a 100K process is waiting and the memory location is the empty memory location is having 200K, however it is been assigned and 100K is the wastage. So that particular wastage is called as the internal fragmentation, or else that particular broken down piece of 100K is called as the internal fragmentation. In totality, we call that as the external fragmentation, and within the particular fixed locations, that too wastage of the simple pieces, we call them as the internal fragmentation. So external fragmentation can be reduced by compacting the thing. Suppose once again rearranging. Suppose if 100K is the wastage for the process in like 150K is the process broken piece of the process tool, that is the available memory of available memory at the process 2. So likewise, suppose if you club all the process, or else if you reshuffle everything and then make space the available for the another process, the complete free space make available for the other process which is in the ready queue, then that particular thing is possible. So external possible can be achieved by reducing this particular compaction or shuffling the whole memory contents, once again creating space, creating some sort of like a free space for the other process which is waiting for. And then the internal fragmentation can be reduced in order to follow certain algorithms, or else you can follow the best fit. Suppose if 150K is waiting and you have 175K, so only little bit of space wastage will be there. So likewise, you can make available that particular programs depending upon the partitions those are available in the main memory. The internal fragmentation can be reduced by effectively assigning the smallest portion, that is the best fit, but large enough for the other processes. So here in this particular session, we had started with the introduction to memory, and then we had seen what are the responsibilities of the operating system in order to manage the main memory. So that we had seen. And then we had seen two concepts of memory management, that is overlays concept and then the swapping concept. Then we had seen the addresses part, the logical address, physical address, virtual address, those particular addresses, and in which context we can call them as the virtual address, in which context we can call them as the logical address or the physical addresses, that we had seen. Then we had seen the allocation of the main memory. The lowest main memory, the OS will be residing, and the higher parts are being left over for the processors to occupy for execution. Then we had seen the partition, memory allocation part, how the static memory is allocated, the dynamic memory is allocated, how the dynamic linking will be happening, static linking will be happening, static loading will be happening, and how dynamic loading will be happening. Then we had seen this particular fragmentation concept, how the external fragments are being happened in the main memory, internal fragmentation is happened, and then how to cope up with the external fragmentation problem and how to cope up with the internal fragmentation problem, that we had seen in this particular session. So in the next session, what we can plan is, we can see the paging system, and then the segmentation, virtual memory, and then the combined system. Those particular things we can see in the next session. Hope you had understood these particular concepts of memory management. Once again, you please go visit MCS 041 Block 1 Unit 3 in order to read these particular concepts along with the examples to clear the concepts, and you please try to attempt the check your progress that is given in the Unit 3. In the next session, we will see the paging system, segmentation, virtual memory systems. With this, I conclude this session. Thank you. Happy learning.